Three, two, one, and we're live. Today on the Mikey Show podcast, we have Paul Hughes. Paul is the president of Grow Calgary, an incredible organization that has some issues right now that we're going to be talking about. And before we get into the interview, I'm going to ask all the listeners to please share. Please share this, and you're about to find out why that's important. Paul, welcome so much. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark. Good to talk to you.
100%. So if you could give us a bit of a background, what is Grow Calgary?
Well, Grow Calgary's nickname is the Veggie Zoo. We grow a lot of vegetables. We fundamentally believe that everyone has a right to eat well, and that it's enshrined in not only our charter, but also in the United Nations Human Rights Declaration, Article 25, which is a right to food. As you know, a lot of people, as your listeners might know, a lot of people are challenged that way. They make harsh decisions on a daily basis around their food. And that's what started Grow Calgary. So where you and I go shopping and we reach onto the shelves to buy what we need to buy, some people reach in their pockets to find out if they have enough money to actually buy something, and then go on to either not buy something or buy something inferior. And we are what we eat. We've been told that since we were kids. You know, finish your veggies, eat your veggies. A lot of people are not do not have access to good nutrition. And so what happens is it then shows up in the healthcare system and as food-related illnesses. And so we can see how a lack of nutrition can have an impact on development. And it ends up costing not only the individual, but taxpayers a considerable amount of money. So we sought to remedy that by creating a farm. And the farm was created. We identified a parcel of land, public land, crown land, and we decided to build on that crown land. And so we were able to sign a lease with the government. We looked at a whole bunch of different properties, and we were directed towards a certain property, and told that, hey, there's two pieces of land here, a surplus and the TUC, and if you develop the surplus, there shouldn't be any problems in the future if they decide to build a road.
Now, what year did this launch? When did you open the doors at Grow Calgary?
Well, in 2008, I came back to Calgary, and I started the Calgary Food Policy Council and the Alberta Food Policy Council, another organization called CLUCK, and I just got really into food politics. And I thought that this was some way that my personal activism could manifest itself or person-fest itself, or whatever the acceptable term is here in 2019, and where I could actually do something. I'm not really very good at holding up a sign and demonstrating and protesting that way. I wanted to do something tangible that actually created real change and would impact people in a substantive way. So we sought to find the actual land and start to initiate that. So in 2008, we started looking around. I came up with this idea to start a farm. I was getting really tired of going to meetings. Maybe some of your listeners would relate to that. There's a lot of talk in the poverty, what I call poverty incorporated, or the poverty industrial complex. A lot of meetings and things like that, but not a lot of action. So I wanted to generate some action here. And so in 2008, we started looking around. 2009, we got our first little bite with the government, but then it took 4 years to actually get on the land. So this has been going on for, we're around coming up to 10 years now of trying to do this. We just finished our 6th season of growing.
That's incredible, Paul. And the challenges that you're having right now, you've been around for a while, and now there's a petition going around to keep you open. So who's trying to shut you down, and why?
The government of Alberta, ironically enough, is trying to shut us down. And just to give you a little bit of background really quickly, that we have people from all over the world that know about Grow Calgary. We are Canada's largest community farm. Everything we grow, we donate. And this has caught the attention of a lot of people in food activism, food security, food insecurity, food justice circles, food access circles, nutrition health circles around the world. And we were contacted by some people that are doing a study, and they said, what's your number one challenge, Mr. Hughes? Like, what it must be Mother Nature, it must be the weather, growing in Canada. And I said, no, it's government. It's government. It's a provincial government and it's a city government, municipal government, and they're constantly unrelenting with us. What are you doing this? What are you doing here? What are you doing here? So we are a massively undercapitalized organization. So we have to do things in a way that isn't desirable in some ways, but we don't come up with excuses not to do things. We come up with excuses to do things. So we might not have all the money we want, and it might not always be as shiny, and not everything is new, and we repurpose and upcycle a lot of things, but we continue to build. So the government is the Alberta government is the entity that is trying to remove us from our farm right now.
Why do you believe that the government is anti-independence, anti what you're doing? Like, why would they? Do you believe that there's a motivation behind why they are giving you so much grief?
That's the question right there, Mark. This is an NDP government that comes from a background of a guy named Tommy Douglas. He was one of the guys who started this, and he was, voted Canada's most famous, most important Canadian. And Tommy Douglas was really an important figure in Canadian politics, and has cast a long shadow on everything, and has quite an influence on how we conduct ourselves as Canadians to this day. And he came from an agrarian background. He was, a preacher in farm country in Saskatchewan. And the first people that he worked with were farmers, because back then 90% of us were farming. And so the proud heritage of this particular political institution, the NDP, is based on farming and agriculture. And this particular government seems to forget that. And so I don't really know their motivation. It's hyper political. Personally, I'm a bit of a controversial figure. I'm not really good at the proverbial kissing butt, and I do definitely. My constituents are.
That's a veterans thing, Paul. A lot of us struggle with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We just say it the way it is, and we don't back down. That's just how we're wired.
Exactly. So, but it's not just to be confrontational. I don't have some kind of I don't have in me this something called I think it's called oppositional defiance disorder or something like that. I don't do it to just to cause a ruckus. I do it because I believe in it, and the people that I work with, we believe in that. And as an individual, as the executive director and president of Grow Calgary, my job is to definitely represent my organization, just like we did when we were in the military. If one of the members or one of their buddies was in trouble, we were there to stand up for him or her and ensure that they were given a fair proceeding. And so we weren't doing it. We don't do it just to cause a disturbance. We're doing it because we fundamentally believe in this issue. And so the government doesn't like that. They want us to fall in line very, very quickly. And so, I did my basic training, and I'm not willing to do it again with the government. And so, but I do expect my government to support ideas that have massive social good. And in this case, with Grow Calgary, and having helped be part of 350,000 meals, 30,000 volunteers, and 17,000 free field trips for our youth to introduce them to all kinds of different things, from composting and pollination, greenhousing, hydroponic systems, irrigation, water capture systems, those types of things, early germination, harvesting, the whole 9 yards. We do all kinds of things with the kids, and they get a chance to do something hands-on, and it's free. We call ourselves the Poor Man's Telespark.
What are your sources of funding? How do you keep the doors open? You don't have actual doors, but as a figure of speech.
Yeah, it's pretty challenging, Mark. Thank you for recognizing that. But we in the Princess Pats, we were very innovative and very creative. And so when I was serving, and maybe when you were serving, we didn't have all the best stuff. But you know what? We would scrounge, we'd find different things, and we're really proud. We have a proud history of making it happen. And, we got to figure it out. And you might not have the tools that you actually need in the field sometimes, but you figured it out. And that's what we do at the farm. And so we've been able to temper our expectations. Not everything is shiny out there, but we still deliver. So we have this greenhouse concept that we call the $5 greenhouse. And it's built from reused wood and reused plastic and things like that. And it pumps out, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tomatoes every year. And it costs us $5 to build, and it's been running for 5 years. So we don't need everything to be brand new. So we've tempered our expectations, and we've been able to conduct our business. And it's been reasonable in the costs that are associated with it, and our per unit cost on the food that we grow is incredibly low. It's unrivaled, actually. Less than a penny a pound for tomatoes is incredible. So, it's that kind of thing. It's just being innovative and creative, so we're able to make it happen. But it is certainly a challenge.
When you opened up, Paul, both the provincial and federal government was conservative. Now, which government has been more friendly towards you, and which one has been more of an obstacle, the Conservative or the new Liberal and NDP governments?
Surprisingly, and I thought everybody said, "Oh, you must be really happy because Rachel Notley has been elected." And at first we're like, "Yeah, this is going to be great," based on kind of what you would think their position would be on this. We thought, yeah, this is going to be great. Maybe we'll finally get a couple of dollars, some ducats from the government, and some more support. So maybe infrastructure will back off a little bit on us, and they'll be more participatory and supportive. No, it was exactly the opposite. In fact, almost immediately it was confrontational. And so to answer your question, I would say that the government that was ruling at the time that allowed us to get on the land, which was the Conservative government, and it was Minister Drysdale, actually, that pulled the trigger and helped us get on the land. That government was incredibly supportive of us, and so yeah, it's a little bit shocking to some of us. But not to say that the Conservative government doesn't understand this. And I think that there's starting to be an understanding around poverty. But this is something that is really quite simple. It's a matter of lack of money, and if we don't deal with it directly, it will come back and bite us in the ass. So we're going to pay for this regardless. If we deal with it and we come up with solutions that reduce the burden on taxpayers, then you start to find some support from more of the conservative circles. Because I do get that. I am a anti-poverty activist, and I do get the, get a job kind of thing. Well, it's not that simple. Poverty isn't that simple as just getting a job. And so it's much more complex than that. And so while we want to dummy it down and just think that it's just about getting a job, and you can do that until the cows come home, it's not going to solve poverty. So you're going to have a more of an innovative and creative approach to it. And so our goal has been to respect the taxpayer and diminish the burden on the taxpayer, and still try to solve the complex issue of eradicating poverty.
Paul, about how many people would you guess, or do you know with any certainty, how many people are relying on Grow Calgary?
That's a tough number for me to come up with. Even after doing this for about 6 years, we do know that the organizations that we contribute to, and we do have a veterans program, veterans health program. We do have a Healthy Heroes program that we just launched. We're actually looking for volunteer members, ex-members of the military, veterans, to participate in that. But we have to date been part of 350,000 meals. So I don't know what those numbers, how many of those vulnerable meals, what that distills down to in the actual number of people, but 350,000 meals is a lot of meals.
In a year?
It's in the 6 seasons that we've been involved.
Okay, so in 6 years, there's been about 50,000 meals per year is what you're providing.
Yeah, and so what's happened is a farm just doesn't sort of happen. It develops and it grows, and it takes some years to, we basically had a gravel pit, and we've had to amend the soil and make the soil healthy. So this last year, we probably grew about a quarter of the total contribution that we have in our history, because the soil is now so healthy. And that's one of the sad things about this whole move off of the surplus land, is that land is now incredibly viable, and we put 6 years of TLC into that. We've built the soil up so that it's nutrient dense. It's some of the best soil you'll find in this country, and we're ready to grow. And really start for it to kick in now after all that hard work.
So what actual actions are the government taking to slow you down and try to shut you down right now? Like, what are they physically doing to make that happen?
They told us that they're terminating our lease on both the transportation utility corridor, which we said absolutely, build the ring road, and we're not here to get in the way of building the ring road. There's no opposition from us whatsoever. That's a complete fabrication. I don't know who is saying that we're trying to block the ring road, but that is completely false, and I categorically deny any opposition to that. We have been, since the day we got the letter, we're like, yep, build the road. I guess you're building the road. Yay, build the ring road. It's the surplus side. They want to terminate the lease on the surplus side as well. Now, we have been able to do, from our research and our meetings, our discussions, our consultations, and all the information that we've been able to get, there's no reason for them to actually access the surplus. They don't need the surplus to build the road. This is our argument. And this is what we're trying to get out there, Mark, is that they do not require the surplus. They need the PUC side of it, and we said, have it. Of course, it's yours. But the surplus, they don't need it. But they still want us off of there. And this is what we're trying to understand. So we've been asking for 6 months, why do you need the surplus? And they have not been able to provide us with an answer, because we believe it has something to do with a lot of the development pressure in that area. They're never going to develop surplus. So when you look at a map, there's a little component of it, and they're never going to be able to develop the surplus side of the of our lease. It will never be developed. It's never developed beside Valley Ridge. It's never developed anywhere on the TUC. It's going to remain surplus. So a community farm is ideal for that area. It's never going to be a urban built realm. It's never going to be built up. There's never going to be buildings there per se, or residences or anything like that. So
have you been looking for, or have you been able to secure any pro bono legal representation?
Not yet. We have not. We have talked to many lawyers. We had Burnett, Duckworth and Palmer, BDP, which is a fairly high-profile firm. We had signed a engagement letter with them. And then it came out that there was a conflict of interest and they had to withdraw, which is unfortunate because they were really excited about working with us, and they thought that we had a very, very strong position. There is a part of our lease that allows the government to amend it. Right now, as it stands with the government, they're intransigent. They're not willing to discuss anything to do with the farm. They're completely unwilling and refusing to change their view. We can't find anything to agree on. They're inflexible.
The bottom line is I've seen this type of thing before. The truth is they probably want to develop that land and sell it to a developer so that they have the tax revenue, and they just want you out of there so that they can have more tax revenue.
That's quite possible, and so we have also, because this has been going on for 10 years, and we have knocked on a lot of different doors. We initially, 4 years ago, we reached out and said we want to be part of a formal consultation and engagement, which means we just want to sit down with them and start talking about what the future looks like so we could prepare for that. They denied us every single time, 15 different requests to engage, and they just kept denying. So, that's not democracy. And this is a government that apparently is about transparency and, respects the working family and respects people that are living in poverty and vulnerable and, would work with a community organization like ours. They don't. They continually are unaccommodating. They're single-minded. They're very, very rigid and hidebound in their approach. They've been adamant about not doing anything with us. And this has been incredibly frustrating through the entire time, through the entire process. We've even made overtures of actually buying the land ourselves. So there's a way for the government to actually cede that land to an organization. There's a way for the government to sell the land, to dispose of it as an asset. They can gift it to us. There's a lot of different things they could do to ensure that we continue to exist, and we meet our continuance obligations
Don't you have a tiny home on your land as well?
We have a number of micro homes because we had Canada's first micro home design build competition, where we started to advance issues around shelter. And right now, it's costing anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 a unit to build one unit for one homeless person, and we're doing it for anywhere from one of the homes is. We've spent $178 on it, and it's beautiful. We've taken windows and wood that we found and scrounged and salvaged, but it's amazing. It's insulated, fully insulated, has sliding doors. It's an amazing new little unit for $178, right up to around $5,000. So somewhere in there. So we've been trying to advance ideas. We're not saying these are the panacea. We're not saying here this is the solution to all of your problems. We're not saying that. We're saying, could you look at this? And if you were actually able to put some of that billions and billions and billions of dollars of money that was given to, the Homeless Foundation and other organizations to eradicate homelessness in the 10-year plan to end homelessness, and we could have diverted it into something else other than just apartment complexes, we may be able to have actually solved homelessness. And so that is a massive burden on the taxpayer, massive burden. We're talking about a tenth of that money being used to solve homelessness, at least transitional homelessness, and then we can start to look at other things. But if you're living under a bridge or in the drop-in center or in a tent, a micro home is a castle, and it brings back dignity. And some of those people, not that they're better than others, some of those people are veterans. Some of these people who are living homeless, are living rough, are on the street, are veterans, and we have not been able to simply solve a very what we think is a very achievable solution through micro home building. And so it's part of it.
Paul, are you familiar with the Legacy Project and Dave Howard?
Yep, absolutely. Yep, we know all about it, and we support it, and we need that's for some veterans, and what we need is hundreds of those. And what our approach has been to do it through a smaller community-minded, a smaller unit. So basically the size of a platoon for your listeners who are in the military, but also provide the supports as well. Because again, poverty is incredibly complex, and you're not going to just solve it by putting somebody in a home and running away. You have to front-end load the entire process. So it's just like putting a kid on the ice in hockey or football or soccer on the field. We don't just put our kids out on the ice and go, oh, here, 5-year-old Bobby, go out there and learn how to play the game. Dad and Mom and all the coaches are going to go have a Timmy's. No, we're right out there with the child. And so we front-end load that entire process. And so as they grow and as they mature, there's not as much coaching that's required, not as much management that's required, and so we can start to withdraw a little bit. But when we first deal with poverty, it's got to be front-end loaded. And that's going to give us the lowest rates of recidivism, so we're not having people that are going through that revolving door and going back into poverty.
Earlier on, I had asked about funding. What are your actual sources of funding right now? Like, where does it come from?
So private donations. We've 100% has been coming from citizens and private individuals and corporations, and we've gotten some donations from Boy Scouts and Girl Guides and the soccer teams and hockey teams and schools. One school did a fundraiser for us, the Calgary Girls School. They came up with almost $1,000, which we invested in seeds and things like that. So it comes from all sectors. We've been very fortunate to have that kind of support.
Is it possible to get a cannabis license and have a small part of it produce in a greenhouse for cannabis to help support the project?
We have talked about that. We grew hemp. We started the first urban hemp crop since the Second World War. a couple of years ago with a lady named Melody Mossing, who runs Hemp Reclamation. We have one of our sponsors is Aurora Cannabis. And so we have talked a little bit about that. As it stands right now, everything we grow, we donate, and it's all been food. It's all been vegetables. So, we are looking at some other things. We're just trying to survive this attack from the government right now.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even know if we're going to exist. The misinformation out there about this move is just it's just crazy. Every day we're fielding questions about where we're moving, and take the offer from the government. And it's like, well, the offer from the government is very, very deceptive. And as we mentioned already during this broadcast, that we spent 6 years trying to build that farm. Well, the government doesn't value any of that. They're willing to move us to a new plot, but they do not value any of the work that's gone on.
But then you're starting from zero with soil that's going to take 6 years before it's producing.
Oh, well, it'll produce right away. It's just not going to. It's going to take us time to again build the farm and the infrastructure that's required, and they haven't valued that at all. So even something, and it doesn't take a lot, but they just have completely ignored that part of infrastructure and social infrastructure, and we think it's valuable. We believe it has substantial value. We think we contribute to our community. We think we're a proud part of our community, but the NDP government is just throwing us under Brian Mason's bus. He's actually one of the ringleaders in this whole thing. He has been very, very difficult. We've invited him out when he was first the infrastructure and transportation minister. He flat out refused to come to the farm. So it was confrontational right off the bat.
He flat out refused to even come to physically have a look.
Yeah, he was in town. We invited him 20 times. Then Sandra Jansen got involved. She became the infrastructure minister. And so we reached out to Sandra because her office, we can see her office from the farm. So we invited her to come out. She's our new infrastructure minister, where we work with infrastructure as the ministry that we work with the closest. And we invited her out. She said, yeah, well, come on, because let me get some things sorted out. 400 and some days later, still has not come out. Promised to come out, still has not come out. She's right there. All the NDP members that we've invited out, none of them have shown up. Deborah Drever showed up because she was our actual MLA. She stopped showing up. We're being completely ghosted by the NDP government. So, it's really tough to have a negotiation with an organization that's just not willing to really talk to you. And when they do talk to you, they send in the sacrificial lamb to talk to us. And that person says, oh, every time you ask something, they go, oh, I got to go back and talk to somebody else and find out what they say. So we're not really talking to the decision makers. And every time they go back, they come back, and the gentleman says to us, and we quite like this guy. He's been really good, but he's one of the assistant deputy ministers in infrastructure, and he understands the issue, but he can't make any decisions. And every time he comes back, he's like, nope, nothing's changed. They won't change. They won't budge. And so we really can't have much of a conversation or negotiation. I can't even call it negotiations, because negotiations implies that people there's some back and forth, and maybe there's a little bit of compromise.
Well,
there is no movement.
Are you up against all three levels of government, or just the municipal government? Like, how is the NDP even relevant if it's a municipal affair?
Because we're on infrastructure land.
Oh, so the provincial government matters then?
Yeah, provincial government matters. Infrastructure land, provincial crown land within the city boundary. So we have to comply with both the province and the city, which is tantamount to kissing two asses with one set of lips. So it's really tough to do. And
so who's the MLA for that area?
Deborah Drever.
And she's not showing up.
No, she's just completely ghosted us. She doesn't respond to anything anymore. But, we know that the NDP, and we know that a lot of times in party politics that, when you're told not to do anything, you shut up and comply. So, she's been ordered, obviously, to have no contact with us and to not do anything. So,
do you know who
kind of sad in a democracy.
Paul, do you know who your shadow cabinet MLA is for that on the UCP side?
No, I don't. We don't know. I don't know that at the moment. We have reached out. At a federal level, we know Ron Liepert, and he's been really, really good with us. On the provincial side, we do not know who is our. No, we don't actually. So
I think that's your best step is find out who the shadow minister is for that area. Our shadow minister is John Barlow for Foothills region. And so find the shadow minister for the UCP and knock on that door. And if you're having any issues with that, let me help you with that.
Yeah, absolutely. We would appreciate any assistance from anybody who has any ideas on this. And we are continuing to negotiate. We're really, really grateful for access to the land. At the end of the day, I mean, we're not a commercial venture. We're completely compassionate. Everything we grow, we donate and give it away. It's all done through volunteers. We don't want to be treated specially, but it's nice to have a little bit of respect from a government when you're dealing with people that are volunteering their time for the betterment of their community. I mean, but we're not getting that at all.
Well, an average of 50,000 meals a year that you're producing is unbelievable, Paul.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's only getting more, Mark. It's increasing. So, but we're kind of at the end of our rope. We may or may not exist right now. We're really not sure. We do have hopefully we've requested a meeting with the government where our entire executive and our board and people that are interested are going to be invited to attend that meeting. It could be maybe categorized maybe as a mini town hall, but they've been dealing with me, and so they're no longer taking me seriously. And then the people that I report to are going, Paul, you got to be kidding. I mean, there's no flex here at all. There's nothing going on. I'm like, they are intransigent. They're not moving. They're adamant. They're holding. They're hidebound. They're maintaining their position. They haven't budged an inch. So we are kind of at the end of our rope with this government. They will not discuss this issue at all, and they fundamentally, Mark, and this is what really is unfortunate, they do not want to even take the time to understand the issue. So we've attempted to do that as high as level as the Premier's office. We did have one of the Premier's handlers that was working with us, and then all of a sudden, boom, we were ghosted. So it's really unfortunate. They're pulling numbers out of the air and just saying, hey, they don't even have any of the agricultural people working with us, because anybody who has any kind of a farming or agricultural background would know that it does take time and it does take resources to get a farm up and running properly.
Paul, do you have a GoFundMe page or a Patreon account?
We have right now. We have the petition. We have the petition that we're trying to promote, and then we also have a donation page on our Facebook.
Okay.
You can donate on Facebook.
So I'll send it to you in a private message. But those are two resources that can be huge for you and can really put it over the top as far as because things like this podcast, if you're to promote it and push it based on funds from a GoFundMe page at a Patreon or a Patreon account, you could be in good shape. I don't know if the Patreon is relevant for what you're doing, but a GoFundMe page for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. We're open to all kinds of suggestions. Our volunteer organization has been pretty consumed just with these negotiations and trying to advance our position. So we are at the end of the day, we are volunteers, and we are open to all suggestions and criticisms and ideas and whatever it is. I mean, we'll do the best we can, but we are in the scrap of our lives with this government. So we are trying to survive right now.
All right. Well, Paul, thanks for being on the show and for sharing the story. We're just about out of time here, but we're going to be sharing this podcast everywhere we can. I'll be sending you the links so that you can share it as well. And if there's one thing or one person that would be the most helpful, if you could sit down with one person right now to have a face-to-face with, who would that be?
I'd love to have the Premier come and walk the farm and see what all these volunteers and what all these kids and youth have done and what we've built from nothing. I really love to create that superior understanding. Unfortunately it would be that. I don't see that happening anytime soon, but it'd be nice to see politicians walk the walk. So,
well, what you've created is absolutely spectacular. What you've achieved is unbelievable. And God bless you for it, brother. It's incredible what you have achieved, and it's an absolute sin that you're not receiving the support that's required to keep the ball rolling.
It really is an odd situation, Mark. I got to thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me about this issue and to do more than just scratch the surface and get down into the nuts and bolts of it. I really, really appreciate that, Mark.
You're very welcome, and thank you for being on the show.